Hi, everybody. We are here to speak today about enterprise search done right. I'm Cahal McCarthy, and I serve here as the Chief Strategy Officer at Core. I'm joined by my two colleagues, Cobus Grayling, who is our AI evangelist. Welcome, Cobus. And Adit, who is our project lead for Search AI. So, Cobus, I'm going to start with you. We all grew up with keyword search, but we went from matching keywords to matching meaning, from finding documents to having conversations. How did RAG change everything? And actually, where did it all come from? What was the genesis of RAG?
So just some background, Carl. When large language models were introduced, very soon people realized that the corpus on which the model was trained has got a cutoff date and it's more general knowledge. So it's not specific to companies. So that was a problem. Then a discovery was made called in-context learning. And in-context learning actually showed that a model will surrender the data it's trained on behalf or favor information that's injected at inference. So if you include that in the prompt, it will actually prioritize that information and use that as a context. And that's really the underlying principle of RAG. And RAG is just a way of scaling that to an enterprise solution and have multiple people query a large language model, but have their context injected with each and every query.
No, that's great. IDT, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We've got a lot of great content in this webinar that we're going to speak to. Call out before we begin the top 4 to 5 pillars people need to understand, think about, and remember as we speak about agentic enterprise RAG search and how it really, really works.
Great. So the top 5 pillars I'm looking at while I'm looking at RAG as a solution to drive value for enterprise. First one would be enterprise grade data integration. So here it's really about bringing the data into the system, and it's not about having X number of connectors or having X number of features. It's about having that one connector that you need as the client and deriving all of the value from that connector, deriving all of the value in the knowledge that is stored in that connector. And as an enterprise using a tool, that is what you want. So that's number one. Second, we have intelligent extraction and preparation of the data. So now you've got this data in, you need to make sure it's optimized for the index. Garbage in, garbage out. Simple logic is that if you're not treating your data well, it's not going to give you the accuracy that you need in real life practical implementations. So that's second. Third, I would say contextual understanding is very important. As Cobus was telling us about the evolution of RAG, now we've come to the next phase of evolution of RAG where it's agentic RAG, where LLMs are telling us dynamically what is the context, and that is helping us optimize the search and hyperparameters in real time. So that is very important. So contextual understanding driven by agentic RAG. Fourth pillar, I would say, is the security and governance at scale. So, RAG always has a lot of data coming in. So, scaling becomes very important, not just at the runtime, but also at the design time. And security mechanisms need to be in place at every single step of the RAG process, or it's just not going to fly for enterprises because they have very strict security rules. And the last pillar I would say is continuous evaluation and optimization. So it's not a one and done job. You need to keep looking at the data that you have, keep looking at the questions people are asking, optimize it, and keep redoing it on a regular basis. And obviously, you cannot do this manually all the time. So you need to have the right tools available for you to be doing this.
Yeah, that's a great summary, DT. So many of the conversations I have when I'm out talking to customers and prospects is, hey, my focus is on cleaning the data. But what you've just said is that's just step one. there's all of these other steps that we need to take from ingestion and beyond to really get us there. I think we're going to come back to that a little bit later, and certainly talk about how that impacts productivity. But let's go back to you, Cobus, for a minute. So Kore.ai just topped the Forrester Wave for cognitive search. ADT just mentioned, the top 4 to 5 pillars that are critical for RAG. I'm sure what you're going to talk about may overlap a little bit, but let's unpack what got Core there to that top right-hand corner.
Yeah, looking at that Forrester report, Carl, and I want to like maybe double click on what Aditi said as well. I really see like 3 layers. So they highlighted 3 layers in the core stack that's really important. So the one thing they highlighted, so I think Aditi looked at it as vertical, pillars. So let me take it horizontally as layers, right? So I think foundationally, Forrester highlighted our hosting capability. Um, and as RAG systems evolve, they have often multiple models, small language models as well, that's orchestrated, being orchestrated. So Core has got this foundational hosting model environment, rather, where you can host models, deploy models, fine tune open source models. I think currently we've got close to 200, open source models you can deploy, and then you've got access or integration to Hugging Face, potentially thousands of models. So we've got that hosting layer. Then Forrester highlighted a second layer of the 3, and that is the application and workflow builder. And so I think, again, that's something Core excels at, to have this complete environment. And I think Forrester, correct me if I'm wrong, Aditi, but they refer to as Core as the agent OS, the agent operating system. So we've got the second layer where you can build workflows and applications. And then at the top, you've got the development, test, and evaluation layer. And Aditi, mentioned that you just can't, build a RAG system and leave it, right? She spoke about how you've got to maintain and really update your data as you go along, and have like data hygiene, to put it like that. So the whole development, evaluation, and test studio we have on top of that is also fundamental. And I like the way Forrester build that narrative on that pyramid with those horizontal layers, where Core excel at each one of those. And maybe if I can add something else, Carl, which I also found interesting, is when they also refer to Core as a chat GPT like solution for the enterprise. And I really like that, because the thing they mentioned was that we, as Kore.ai, we really excel at building context. And so it's multi-turn conversations. So it's not just a question and answer, but if users ask follow-up questions, we maintain that context throughout the conversation. And they spoke about Kore.ai really supporting the user journey. And I think that's really important, because you want, if enterprise spend money on a solution like this, they want the employees to use it, and having an interface that's aware of your personal journey, discovering information within an organization. I think that's a valuable aspect.
Yeah, look, I actually think you touched on a couple of really important things there. Very often when we see demos, and demos don't lie, we see the really simple questions. It's book my travel or search for travel. But what you're really saying here is, if you want to get into the complex and a really in-depth conversation, you should probably be considering Core. Now, I want to push both of you a little bit harder on this one. Forrester is a reflection of commercially available search tools. It's got to lead us to the conversation around build versus buy. It obviously doesn't assess some of the solutions companies have built themselves. In the context of cognitive search, how should a company think about buy versus build? I'll start with you, Aditi.
Great question. So, we do get that question a lot from a lot of our clients and prospects as well. What we like to tell them is, we're not looking to tell you what is best. you are the best judge of what's best for you. We are here to give you all of the information that we have, right? So we can tell you the difficulties of building a rank product, and then it's up to you if you want to decide that that's worth it to do it yourself or not. So first of all, again, as I mentioned in the pillars, scaling is a really big issue for RAG, and that is something that we deal with at a very large scale. We have a lot of learnings from all of our implementations that we have done, from all of our cloud implementations, and we are really able to drive that, and we've able to crack that. For if you're a small team doing that for an organization, you may not have the right knowledge or the tools available to crack that. Along with that, that's definitely an added cost also that you need to worry about, and you will have to evaluate it against your data. That's one complexity. Another complexity is hosting the LLM models, managing them, managing the infrastructure. That's another factor. Third factor is whenever you're getting in data from the connectors, there is a lot of management that goes on into that. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into that. Is it really worth it for you to be doing that? You are going to have to keep track of, let's say, if you're using SharePoint as a connector, did SharePoint come out with a new release? Did they change something in their backend as part of the new release? Do you need to update your rack system based on that? All of these evaluations and decisions you need to going to be made on a very regular basis. Then you're going to worry about scaling your vector database, which is another problem. It's not just going to be optimized out of the box. It's not going to work immediately, and I can guarantee you that there is a lot of work involved in scaling vector databases and making sure you are balancing latency and performance. So these are some of the things, and these technologies keep changing all the time. The AI space is just growing so fast, it's exponential. Uh, so, keeping up with all of that and doing it, it's a difficult task.
Yeah, no, so what I heard was like scale, remaining current, and then I think, Cobus, you also touched on understanding the user journey is a critical component to success.
Just to double click on that, that's one thing that Forrester highlighted, that Kore.ai excels at the customer, the user experience, and the user journey or customer journey. And I think that really stems from the origins of Core in terms of customer service and helping people that's got some kind of problem with a product or a service. So, and that's also something Forrester highlighted in terms of Core, that we excel at a conversational user interface, an unstructured interface. And I think Aditi, when she speaks about scaling and the challenges of scaling and building versus buy, you've got this problem of the user input is very unstructured, conversational, and where you're dealing with vector databases and chunks, that's a very structured back end. So all the work happens, in the back office, because the user can just offload that complexity to the core platform to structure and manage the interface. So that's one component of it. But if I can just add, Carl, when you spoke about building versus buying, Aditi initially spoke about the pre-built connector. So Forrester also highlight that Core has got more than 60, I think, pre-built connectors. So these pre-built connectors, and there are also other templates that's involved. So that really accelerates, the rolling out of a solution by making use of these pre-built data connectors and templates. But to mention something else, Carl, around building and buying. So obviously, companies want to achieve table stakes as soon as possible, but then they also want to differentiate. And the moment they can differentiate, then obviously they can have the competitive advantage. And what I really find interesting about if you look at the scoring matrix of Forrester, they've got a scoring for innovation and a scoring for adoption. And what I find interesting is that companies, they gravitate to one of the two. So they're either an innovator or they excel at adoption. And Core scored full marks in both of those. So Core is an innovator, like full marks innovator, but also full marks in adoption. And I love what Aditya alluded to when it comes to rolling out. That's where the challenge becomes. That's a really the challenging portion to handle the customer or the user experience. And I think for Core to be able to live in that tension between those two worlds, it really speaks to uh, you know uh, a buy rather than a build approach, in terms of just speed of rolling out and etc. etc.
Got it. No, that's great. I've got to talk about connectors. Both of you have mentioned it, I think, 13 times already. We have connectors, so does everybody else. I just did a search. We've got 60 plus. If I look at other alternatives out there, they might have up to 200. So how is ours an advantage? And did we build it in a way that the competition may have missed?
I love that question. I love talking about connectors. There is a lot of work that our team has put into that, and I love highlighting that. So, as I was saying, when I was talking about the pillars of RAG, it's about having enterprise grade connectors. It's not about having X number of connectors. You have that great, but when you are trying to use that for a practical implementation, are you able to? That is the most important part. And when you go into that depth, when you go into that detail, you come across a lot of scenarios and areas where you're going to face problems. So let's start with the most important one, uh, role based control. So if I have access to a document, any other user who does not have access to it should not be able to to get an answer from it, should not be able to access that information. That is really very crucial, and that is something that we are able to give you out of the box for all of the connectors. So when we add a connector in Core, it means it is certified, it means that RSAL is working for it, and it means that your data is secure. That is first. Now let's go to the second one of the sub features that we have as part of connectors. We like to call them pre-built connectors. And I again like to highlight for Esther here what they said about us is that we are investing a significant amount of R&D, especially in the connectors and also in our agentic RAG. Let's talk about the connectors part right now. So when we are adding a connector, it's not just about adding a name in the UI. It's not about adding a name in the website. It's about really looking at what does that connector do for their users. So if you're a SharePoint user, what is SharePoint giving to you? If you're a Jira user, what is Jira giving to you? We understand that. We understand the data that you're storing on SharePoint or Jira. We try to understand the average use case and then give you a pre-built connector with all of the features for it. So, for example, field mapping is one feature. Uh, Content filters is one option. We give you logging for every single thing that you do with the application. Uh, all of these features allow you to build implementations that really work. We also have different security connection options. So, depending on your enterprise rules and your standards, you can choose which one works for you. You can define what is the subset of data that you want to bring into Search AI. Maybe you don't want to search on some data. Maybe you know that this data is 10 years old and I know I don't need to crowd the system with it. So, all of these controls are built in and given to you. And we are confident that the work that we have done in making these pre-built connectors is going to address most of the scenarios. But for the scenarios where there is an unknown, where you either have some custom data coming in or you just have a system that probably we have not come across, we are giving you all the tools built into the application. So all you have to do is just go through our documentation, just understand a bit, modify it, and you're good to go.
No, that's great. Um, I couldn't have a conversation if I didn't bring up hallucinations. And hallucinations, I think, could be described as every enterprise's nightmare. How does Core technically ensure answers are anchored in actual company data? I'd love you both to speak about the retrieval mechanism, the citation approach, and maybe let's call it the confidence scoring to make sure that when I ask a question, I can trust the answer I get.
So we have multiple touch points where you would need to control this and play with this. So this is what I like to tell, like for any core problem that you're trying to address, if I give you one solution and I ask you to use it all the time, that's not going to work practically. So I always need to inform you that, okay, these are the reasons that this could happen, and these are the things that you can do to address them. So, when coming to hallucination, first problem could be that the content that you have retrieved is probably not the most relevant or the most accurate for the question that the user has asked. So, that is the first step itself where something can go wrong. So, what are the safeguards we have built into the product that allow you to address that? So I like to call them hyperparameters, and there are several of them throughout the application that you can fine tune. But the most basic one would be the thresholds you can play around with. You can play with vector search, hybrid search, RAG fusion, all of these things. For to get the most accuracy and the best results, you can always enable agentic RAG. So what we have tried to do is give you agentic RAG out of the box by default. What we do is we analyze all of the content that you have added to an application, to your specific application, not somebody else's connector, not somebody else's application, that specific one that you have added, understand it, fine tune the prompts according to that, and enable agentic RAG for you. So what's going to happen now is an agent is going to use an LLM and intelligently tell me for each single query what are the best parameters for me to retrieve the content. This is really important when you have a database that's thousands of documents, millions of documents. In these scenarios, if you're expecting RAG to just work out of the box like magic, I'm sorry to tell you that is not how it's going to work. That's where agentic RAG can help you. And to go from amazing to awesome results, what you can do is always fine tune these prompts further. So that's one. Now, let's say you got the correct chunks shortlisted, and now you have given them to the LLM, and the LLM is generating an answer. Now, what is something that can go wrong at this layer? Maybe the LLM hallucinates, maybe it responds back with some toxicity or some of that. So, we have guardrails built into our product that help you control this behavior and stop any harmful response reaching the user. So, we are stopping it before it reaches the user. I think that is also really helpful. So, by using these different mechanisms, you will be able to control this behavior. And obviously, prompt optimization, prompt fine tuning, always very important. That's always something that we have to talk about. But the features that I talk about, these are other than the prompt fine tuning.
Hmm. If I can, Carl, to maybe add two things to what Aditi just said. I think, just to add to that in terms of hallucination, and also two aspects that Forrester highlighted. The one was course partnerships with, hyperscalers. So the deep integration we have into existing hyperscalers. And so there's a lot of, tools and functionality that companies already have, and they can make use of core within the environment. So if they got, as Aditi mentioned, existing guardrail tools or implementations, it's not a lift and shift, but core can be leveraged within their environment. And the second thing I wanted to mention, when Aditi spoke about hallucination, and again, Forrester highlighted that in terms of our hosting capability. I think it's really important. Enterprises need to be in control of their own destiny. So they need model sovereignty and they need data sovereignty. And I personally find it unacceptable for an enterprise to make use of a commonly used language model. There are numerous studies where these models drift, they change behind the API. There's one study is called catastrophic forgetting. So it's really frightening for me to think that companies make use of a model that's not within their own control, and also they cannot on a granular level control the flow of data. As Diti mentioned, how on a granular basis you can manage who's got access to certain documents and information. So also you want to manage the data flow to and from your model. And again, to emphasize, we scored high on hosting, and I think there are a few, a handful. I think few companies can compete with Core's prowess in terms of being able to host and deploy and fine tune language models.
That's great. That is awesome. The earlier, Cobus, you referred to table stakes. So there's always a push-pull in a business. And I'd like to ask you the question, how do you build for both a business user who wants just to make it work and let's say the data scientist who wants everything?
Yeah, I think the answer there is, and it's something that Aditi also alluded to earlier. I think the answer is that we do have a no code first approach. And when Aditi spoke about the parameters, like we've got a visual data pipeline within Search AI, which you can visually, have a pipeline where you manage your information. So I think when it comes to table stakes, we've got a no code graphic user interface where you can do most everything. But then there's also the low code to pro code to low code set aspects where you can really get your hands dirty and build integrations and models that's really code based. And I think that's a balance that Core has achieved. So you've you can almost have business users defining the solution they want, the table stakes. But if you've got data scientists and highly technical people that really want to become granular in terms of development of the system, then they can go and take a pro code approach. And I think what DT said also about going into production, it really becomes granular, and you want to have fine grain control in managing your system. So I think that having that balance is really important, and I think many companies are categorized as pro code or no code or low code, whatever. And I like the spread of Kore.ai. And again, Carl, that's something that the Forrester report highlighted, the breadth in terms of the offering of Core. And I think so it caters for all of those needs.
Okay, let's go to the context window trade-off. And this is for both of you. Okay, so this one, too little context, incomplete answers. Too much, diluted relevance, typically associated with higher costs. How do you balance this? And obviously this is tied to relevant chunking. So I'd love maybe IDT for you to take it first.
Sure. So I think that is a question that we come across on the daily when we're dealing with clients and we're helping them set up their RAG and derive value from it. Balancing cost is always going to be a concern whenever you're using any AI tool, and that's obviously also true for RAG. So we have two ways to deal with it. Again, one is at design time, one is at runtime. So for users who may not be familiar, design time is basically the stage of the application where you are making configurations to get the index ready. So this is a stage where it will take some time. Okay, you have to get the data in, you have to prepare the data, chunk the data, and then you prepare the index. And runtime is where actually the user interacts with the system. They ask a question, they get a response. That's basically runtime. So now, how do we solve this problem of fitting it into the context? So at design time, it's very important that you're treating your data properly. Now, this is where I would like to highlight our extraction framework. So, unlike a lot of other players in this industry, what we offer you is a framework that allows you to choose which extraction models to choose for which content type. It's very granular control that really allows you to optimize your system. And here, again, coming back to what Kobus was saying, uh, our approach is both no code and pro code at the same time. I know it may sound confusing, but we have cracked it in our product. Business users can interact with it and understand it. But if you're a more advanced user and you want more control, you can always go in and modify it as per your requirements. So we give you out of the box models, we give you out of the box features, and at every single layer, we also give you the option of a custom feature. So, custom connector, custom extraction, custom embedding models, custom LLM, everything. You can customize everything as part of Core Search AI product. So, so let's say, okay, now you've selected the right models, you have extracted the content, but now you need to clean the content, because if you have a lot of noise present in your source data and then you are sending it to LLM, obviously it's going to be a problem. LLM has more context than it needs. It might give you additional information, it might miss certain things because you are confusing it by giving it too much data. So that's where our transformation and enrichment pipelines come in. You can clean your data again using any custom tool that you want, or an LLM, or just write a systematic program to deal with it. So this is really important, and it also uh, gives a new flavor to RAG, where you can also write back data to the source system. So let's say you found a ticket on Jira while you've added them to Search AI, and you found a ticket that is 12 years old, but it's still there in Jira. You want to delete it? Okay, go ahead, write a logic, and as part of Search AI, delete it. You want to do any of these orchestrations? We give you a tool, you set it up once, and then that's done. You never have to worry about it again. It's not a manual process, it's fully automated. So these are the kind of benefits that our product can give. Uh, so you've extracted the chunks, you've also enriched the content. Now you have to create embeddings on them. So it's important to use the right embedding model so that when the system is retrieving the data, it is able to retrieve the correct data. So here we give you two options again. One is a text embedding model, which allows you to represent the textual content, and another is an image embedding model, which allows you to represent images directly in the vector space. Instead of going through an OCR model, facing extraction issues, no, we directly convert it to an embedding model and then provide it to the LLM while the answer generation process. So that's a really huge benefit, and it gives great results, especially for content that has a lot of images, charts, graphs. So that's there. So this was all of the design time. At runtime, again, we give you a bunch of tools that allow you to control what data do you want to send as part of the LLM context. Do you want to restrict certain data? Do you want to boost certain data? Do you want to lower certain data? This is where business rules come in, where you can embed your business logic into the retrieval process directly. So there's business rules, there's token configurations, there's LLM configurations. We basically want to give you every single choice, and you want to leave it up to you. We don't want to influence your decision of either the LLM provider or the best configurations. We'll give you a default, and we'll also give you the option to change it. So that's our approach.
It's good. Cobus, what would you add?
Uh, I want to double click on one thing Aditi said and then add something. So when Aditi spoke about giving the option and the freedom to our users and enterprise developers, I once went to our CTO and I asked him, "What are we building?" So I explained, what are we busy with?" And then he said to me, "We're building the operating system for agentic systems. We're building an agentic operating system." And that's stuck in the back of my head. And I think Aditi just explained that in terms of what we are busy with. And I see it as really a feather in our cap that Forrester also used that phrase and said, take a look at Kore.ai. They are building the AI agent or the agentic operating system. And so what I like about what Aditi said is that our search.ai solution can live on its own, but it also lives within a very rich environment. Again, that's something Forrest alluded to, that it's not a ring fence solution. If you need to expand it, then that capacity is there. So in a sense, it's future proof, and there's also value for money. And in a secondly, I remember when large context windows were introduced, especially by Anthropic. I think they were first, and you could basically upload a book and ask questions about this book. And there were so many headlines that said RAG is dead, and I responded by saying RAG is not dead. I mean, that's a solution. So people might ask, what's the difference? But that's really a solution for a single user, end user. It's not an enterprise solution. You can't keep it. It's not scalable. You can't keep that kind of information, so to say, in memory for thousands of users. And really, I think Corporate AI also excels in highly regulated environments, banking, finance, and medical. And hence, to Aditi's point, that we've got these observability, inspectability, discoverability tools, management tools to really exercise all due diligence when it comes to managing data.
No, that is great. I think there's some great insights there, and it's really you've called out the agentic operating system, Cobus, here a few times, and I think that's a great way for us to think about that. When you nest that on top of DT's 5 pillars, I think when you and bring both of those together, people can have a good framework on how to think about this topic. I want us to now look forward, and this is really, really hard because I'm going to ask you to look forward almost 12 months. To look forward a day is a long time in this business, but 12 months. And I'd like you to nest your answer in employee productivity because we're doing this for a reason. And the reason is to make our employees far more productive, make their jobs easier, make them more successful in their role. What do you think will separate companies that succeeded with enterprise AI and those maybe who spent millions of dollars and didn't achieve the same success?
So I think down the line, the challenge is going to be to scale two aspects of search. So the one aspect will be the lower down under the hood to orchestrate multiple documents. So someone asks a question. So to be able, and we are already doing that, but I think that portion will really expand. Were you able to gather information from a large corpus of documents or data and orchestrate that data to give you an answer? Then above the hood or the visible user layer, users will start to increasingly define the formatting or how they want their data to be synthesized. So within a company, I want a yearly report, I want a white paper, I want a technical report, whatever the case might be. So you're going to have the under the hood that's going to really expand in terms of how vast amounts of relative data is orchestrated and synthesizing the top layer. So someone asks a question. So to be able, and we are already doing that, but I think that portion will really expand. Were you able to gather information from a large corpus of documents or data and orchestrate that data to give you an answer? Then above the hood or the visible user layer, users will start to increasingly define the formatting or how they want their data to be synthesized. So within a company, I want a yearly report, I want a white paper, I want a technical report, whatever the case might be. So you're going to have the under the hood that's going to really expand in terms of how vast amounts of relative data is orchestrated and synthesizing the top layer. And then secondly, and lastly, Carl, I think, and it's something you've also alluded to in the past, is that, noise within the workplace will really go down. Aditi spoke about the information, the context you submit, and she used the word noise, right? So noise is any irrelevant information you've got within that chunk of information. So you want really clarity, really applicable information. And as we spoke before, Carl, one of our partners mentioned that I think up to 20%, there's a reduction of up to 20% of noise in the workplace. So noise is when employees ask peers questions, or they ask their managers a question, where can I find this document? Aditi spoke about SharePoint and Jira and all these, stores of information. And organizational noise is people disrupting each other, pivoting, asking, where's this? Where can I find that? Especially with onboarding. And I think organizational noise will go much lower because there will be the centers, this central store of information where they can retrieve accurate, synthesized, customized information for themselves. If that makes sense.
So I would just add to what Corbus has already said. I definitely agree with everything that he said. Um, because definitely I'm a little biased, I'm going to say the key is going to be RAG. For any agentic system to be truly functional and truly drive value, it needs to be contextual to your enterprise knowledge. And RAG is a huge part of that. RAG is the way to achieve it. And you need to have all the layers built in to be able to actually do that for production use cases. What I would also like to add is what would truly differentiate uh, people to do this is to separate the noise and the hype from the real stuff. So this is something that we've seen in the past as well. Uh, AI space is just moving extremely fast, and every few months, every week, sometimes there's a new concept, there's a new technology that's coming up, there's a new algorithm that's coming up, and what's gonna drive value is to separate which ones are just hype and which ones are truly going to help you. So this is something that we have seen. We have evaluated around 20, 30 different retrieval algorithms, but we only give you the option of two. Now we're going to increase it to three, but this is in the last 1 year, but we have evaluated 30. So we are trying to take that onus on us. Kore.ai is trying to do that for you, trying to filter out the noise, try to identify, okay, what is the feature, what is the algorithm that really increases accuracy, that really helps the customer, and give that to you as part of our product.
There's a lot of hard work that goes into presenting that answer, but understanding each and every one of those layers and what you access and how you access them through your connectors is really going to be one of the fundamental differences on those who are successful and those who are not. Let me thank you both for taking the time to join me. I feel like there's another webinar here that we could have for another hour. I hope the insights here that the team has shared are beneficial to the audience. Cobus referred many, many times to the Forrester research, where Core was honored and represented in the top right-hand quadrant. We're very delighted with that. You're going to receive a copy of that in your inbox in about the next 30 minutes or so. It's a great read. I think it's an insight that will add, hopefully, to what you learned from the team today. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you, everybody who is going to look at our webinar here today. Thanks.
Thank you.